Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk to you about a show that has finally came out that I've been wanting to review for a long time. And that show is WandaVision. Finally. And I mean finally. This show has come out. It was supposed to come out, I believe, a year ago, but the pandemic slowed that down. But now it has finally, truly launched and came out. WandaVision came out on Disney Plus, and it's the very first MCU show to come out. There are more that are supposed to come out, but for right now, this is the first. I'm very happy about this show. There are some things that could have been better. There are some things that I'm still wondering exactly why they went in this direction. That direction being sitcoms. It's just kind of like a weird, bizarre way to take like a superhero property. But it's Disney Marvel, so they're very known for being like silly and a little wacky and and also being serious, but they have like a lot of forced humor in their movies. Now, the reason why they went with this approach isn't because of the creator. It actually has to do with Kevin Feige. For some bizarre reason, he wanted to go the sitcom route. Why? However, I can respect them going this route because it is very creative and and people like that change things up. You can't always have everything the same. But it was just still weird to go in this type of like direction. But hey, it worked for some people and it didn't work for others. Personally, for me, I actually like the sitcom aspect of it because it reminded me so much of like the classic TV shows back when TV show was like really good back in the day and things were like very different and wasn't so much the same. It just really felt like so good to see like those older shows like Bewitched and stuff. And to the point where I really want to start like rewatching that stuff because I was a kid and I used to watch that in reruns because I was born in the 80s, so it was kind of like that's what I grew up with. So it was kind of cool to harken back to like those like older days, when things were a whole lot more easier and TV was a bit more funner at times. I also liked it because it gave Wanda and Vision something to do other than just like throw punches. They finally got their own property instead of being in team up movies. Because for the most part, like I said, they're just there to like throw punches or get blamed for something or give a philosophical speech, but they really don't do much. And because they're not like the main three, they never got their own movies. It's been like a whole decade and people have been wanting like a Black Widow movie, but it's to the point now where I really just don't care because it's just like it's been a whole decade. She's basically a sidekick to everybody else. All these heroes in these MCU movies are basically sidekicks to Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. And now Captain Marvel. So, well, and also Black Panther. So it's kind of like, it's just like, whatever. I really don't care now. It's also really good to see Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bentley just like, show some real like acting chops and comedic chops because their characters are like pretty one-dimensional in the MCU. So it was really nice to see them like explore and change and do comedy and have some real depth and some meekness and gravitas to their acting. Because I've never seen them in anything else other than this, the MCU. So it was like really cool to see them like, even though it's still the MCU, to do something like really cool. Sadly, Kevin Feige has stated that whatever happens in these movies, stays in the movies. Whatever happens in the show, stays in the show. It's very similar to back to Marvel TV productions back when the MCU was first kicking off. And like they had a bunch of Marvel properties on other networks and TV channels. And those those TV shows never really interacted with the movies, and whatever happened in those shows never happened in the movies. In fact, they had to keep referring to the first events of the Avengers movie as the New York incident. And this is because Kevin Feige likes to keep things simple. He doesn't like to overcomplicate things. And he really doesn't like Jeff Loeb at all. And Jeff Loeb was the one head in charge of the Marvel television properties. Those shows were very cheaply made and they were very grounded. Some was actually pretty good, but a whole lot of them sucked. Daredevil was on Netflix and I loved Daredevil to death. It was a great show. That hallway fight was like top notch. The Punisher was also a great show that was on Netflix. And it sadly had to get canceled because of the whole merger thing between Fox and Disney, and Marvel wanted all their properties back. Defenders were pretty good. It started off very slow, but towards the middle and the end, it started to kick up. They also had Jessica Jones, which I never could get into. They had Iron Fist, which I could not stand no matter which season it was. Although the second season was slightly better, I still didn't like it. Luke Cage was okay, but I still didn't like it. On the ABC side of things, they had Agents of S.w.o.r.d, which that was created by Josh Whedon at that time, before people found out about Josh Whedon. And it was supposed to tie into the first phase of the Marvel thing. But, it started going its own route once fans didn't really like it and Kevin Feige didn't like it. Agent Carter was also on ABC, and it was supposed to tie in, which I love Agent Carter. The first season was great. Second season, not so much. Then they had Inhumans, which I could not get into. Freeform had Cloak and Dagger. It was an okay show. It was very different. I liked the tone it took. I like how they tried to tell stories in a different way. I really, really loved the actress who played Dagger. She was great. And my favorite part in the entire 2 seasons was when she got kidnapped and she broke free and escaped. And then Cloak, he was fighting this dude on the outside. Hulu had The Runaways, which I actually really liked that. That was probably one of the closest Marvel adaptations they could have came to. It wasn't quite like the comic book, but it was pretty close. My all-time favorite was Sister Grimm, aka Nico. She was great. She was actually, before WandaVision came out, she was technically the very first Marvel live-action witch. But now, of course, we know Wanda was the very first, and so now Nico is the second. Hulu also had Hellstrom. It came out right after the merger. I've never watched it. I might check it out. I don't know, but like all the other ones, it got canceled. Fox had The Gifted, which that show should have been a whole lot better, but it wasn't. It lasted for 2 seasons, and they barely used their powers. I remember years ago when the Olsen twins were really little, somebody was doing an interview with them and they were at their house. And I remember seeing this teeny tiny little girl who was 3 years old playing on drums. I had no idea Elizabeth Olsen would grow up to be such an amazing actress. She really gives it her all in WandaVision. It's cool how she mimics all these classic female characters. It's cool how she brings more gravitas to her own character, and why she proves that, she is the most powerful now in the MCU. Which that is still up for debate for a lot of people. A lot of people still feel it's the Hulk because he keeps saying, he's the stronger there is, and he gets stronger as he gets madder. But, once he gets calm, he slows down and becomes weaker. I say it should be Thor because he's a god. I mean, come on. Odin was unstoppable in the comics. However, there was a time when Kevin Feige said that Captain Marvel was supposed to be the most powerful because her powers comes from alien technology and cosmic and stuff like that. However, because of the backlash that both her character and Brie Larson has gotten, he later shifted his focus towards Wanda, which we all saw in Infinity War and in Endgame. Actually, to tell you the truth, there was supposed to be an alternate version of Endgame. Because Captain Marvel came out after Infinity War, if the Captain Marvel movie were to do good, then she would be featured a lot in Endgame. If not, she would just pop in and pop out. And as you can see, she popped in and she popped out. So, yeah. Now, on to WandaVision. When I first heard the pitch for this idea, I heard it was going to be sitcoms. And my first idea was, why? I didn't understand. But it's just like whatever. It's just MCU, I guess. They're like very silly. Which tell you the truth, I'm getting kind of tired of all this forced humor in the MCU. It's childish, it's immature, it's gooberish, and it's just really stupid. Now, DC has proven that they can be very serious when they need to be. And sadly, they have proven that sometimes they can get a little wackadoo also. But all this forced humor in the MCU really needs to stop. So for the most part, the comic books were always very serious. That was until the animated series started coming out. Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, like all of those shows had a lot more humor in it, more so than like the comic books. But of course, because those shows are very popular, what happens in the cartoons started getting translated into the comics, which that always happens. And so they started being a bit more sillier and stuff in the comic books. However, there are two people to blame for all this forced humor in the MCU. The first one is being Jon Favreau. When he made the first Iron Man movie, Jon Favreau is all about comedy. Anything you ever seen him in is always comedic. So he brought in a lot of like this juvenile humor into the MCU. I remember in Iron Man 2, I listened to the commentary, which this sound I didn't pick up on at first. But when War Machine shot out his missile, I think it was supposed to be like the ex-wife or something like that. It made a fart noise. And Jon Favreau mentioned that and he started giggling in the commentary. And I'm just like, that's like so stupid. Like, why would you do something like that? Like, I don't care if it like was a dud, but don't give it a fart noise. And the second person to blame is Joss Whedon. Like I said before, this is way before people knew he was like a terrible person. You can look that up on the internet to find out every bad thing he's like done, and some of it is very like scary. Anyway, so like with him, he has a certain style. Like when it came to Buffy, that style is something gets really serious and it starts to build up more and more intense, and then all of a sudden he'll throw in like humor to like distract you, and that's like his style. He's been doing it since like he been into television and movies, and he brought a lot of that into the Avengers movie. So of course, that like people love that, and so Marvel's like, okay, let's just keep doing it, and so they kept doing it, and they're still doing it till this day. But people are getting really tired of this formula that Marvel has. All of the costumes look very similar. All of the hero and the villain costumes look very similar. People are tired of all this juvenile humor. Folks want to see blood. Like, you don't have to get like nasty with it like the Evil Dead, but people want to see blood. In the second phase, people were having their limbs cut off and there was never no blood. Also, Marvel has a really bad villain problem. And they started to fix that with Thanos and Killmonger, but once again in WandaVision, they brought back this whole trope of like terrible villains. Now, these villains are okay and everything, but I don't really feel too scared by them. They're just your typical Marvel villains. Now, when this show starts off, it starts off in the first two episodes being all about sitcoms. And like I said before, I'm totally okay with that. I know some people have like hate that and they have like railed on it, but I'm totally okay with it because I really love Bewitched. Like I love Bewitched, I love Bewitched, I love Bewitched. Dick Van Dyke I've never seen, but I've seen clips. But the whole like seeing Wanda use her powers very similar to Samantha was like really cool. Seeing them do like all that like humor was also awesome. Not every joke landed, but for the most part it was decent, and it was really cool and just really refreshing this. Now, WandaVision is all about misdirection. It's a huge red herring. There are red herrings throughout this entire season with Evan Peters, with fan theories, with Wanda herself, with Vision. And so that's what was like really like interesting. But I'm okay with that also because of one thing. In the comic books, the Scarlet Witch is a very broken character. She's constantly getting retconned. One minute she's a mutant, next minute she's a mutant. The next minute she is Magneto's daughter, then she's not. Then there's that weird incest thing that she had with Pietro in the Ultimate comic books. And it's like everything's changing. Like first her powers are mutant powers, then it's chaos magic and all this other stuff. And then the whole House of M thing. So it's like she's a very broken character, and we see this on WandaVision, and that's why I'm okay with the whole misdirection, with the whole ruses and stuff. It's because she is broken herself. So why not have her show be broken and be complex and confusing? So after in the first episode, after all like the comedy shenanigans and stuff, something serious starts to happen. Vision's boss and wife are over there for dinner, and then his boss starts to act kind of weird, almost like he's kind of like phasing out of this fake reality that Wanda has created, and then he starts to choke on his food. It gets very serious and creepy because of the way Wanda looks at him, with kind of like this very stern, kind of like irritated like expression on her face, and she tells Vision to help him. So Vision reaches inside and helps him on the food that he's choking on. And then I think she uses her power to rewind stuff to where before he starts choking, and then they leave after that. And it's kind of creepy. It's kind of like, what's going on? She is aware of what is going on, but we, the audience, have no idea what's really going on. And then I'm not 100% sure, I believe we see a man in a bee suit crawling around in the sewer system or something like that. And then towards the end of the episode, it starts to like zoom out, and then we start to see that there are people watching what's going on in this fake reality on a television, on an old television. But the technology around the TV is brand new. It's modern. So it's kind of like, what is going on? So then in the second episode, it's more like a Dick Van Dyke episode, which I've never really seen Dick Van Dyke. But yeah, it's a lot of like references to it. But anyway, pretty much it's like Vision, he's kind of like doing this magic trick show type thing for the people in their community. I guess they have like a talent thing. And so like, and he's just like hamming it up, Paul Bentley. He's just giving his all comedic timing, chops, everything. It's like great, you know what I'm saying? Something I didn't mention in the first episode is that there's a woman named Agnes, and she is the nosy neighbor. And this woman is phenomenal and stuff. So it's like, she's there, she's being nosy like the typical neighbor. And then there's a woman in there named Dottie. And Dottie's played by a woman who was on the Buffy show. So while at work, somebody gives Vision some bubble gum, and he's chewing it, but it gets stuck in his circuitry, in his gears. And the way they displayed this was like very weird, because it's so classic 60s, because they didn't have good CGI back then, so they had to use like cartoon models. So that was really cool to see, Wanda help him out with that. So some more like shenanigans happen, and then some mishaps happen. So where Wanda has to use her magic, but she does it like in secrecy. And so it's like very funny, and it's just like really great. But then something very eerie happens. We start to hear a voice on this old school radio, and that person is calling out to Wanda. Now, I had no idea who it was at that time. Like, I don't know. Next thing you know, like the thing explodes. I think she uses her powers on it, because in X-Men Evolution, she could make things blow up just by looking at it. But yeah, so it explodes, and then next thing you know, Dottie, she breaks her hand on the glass, and it starts bleeding, but it's bleeding in actual color while everything else is in black and white. Now this is one thing that irritates me: fan theories. I hate fan theories to death, because for the most part, they're almost always wrong. Sometimes they are right. Now with Dottie, people speculated that she was Mephisto. Why? Because the glass broke and her hand bled in color. That's not a good reason to think she's Mephisto. First of all, this whole reality fantasy thing that Wanda has created, like, how would Mephisto be affected by that? He's like the Marvel's version of the devil. So basically he's like a deity, you know what I'm saying? Then when the black dude starts to act weird, they assume he's Mephisto. I'm just like, Lord have mercy. Now with the whole Agnes thing, they were spot on with that, but I'll get into that later, so let's put a pin in that for now. So, they're doing like the Dick Van Dyke thing, and then they're outside in front of their house. And then the dude in the bee suit comes out of the sewer, and he looks at one of them, and he has a very creepy stare he gives them. Next thing you know, Wanda uses her magic, rewinds everything, and he is now gone. And it's like, whoa, who is this dude? You know what I'm saying? Like, he just, like, he apparently he knew what was going on and stuff. And I like this about the show. I like how it gives you little teeny tiny bits of like suspense that lets you know that, something's not right. Now, I forget. I don't know if she gets pregnant in this episode or the third. But anyway, let's jump over to the third. So, at some point in time, um, she starts to wants to have a baby. And so, she ends up pregnant. I'm pretty sure it does happen in the third episode. But this is also a Brady Bunch episode. Now, I love the Brady Bunch so much. It was just a great show to watch back in the day. I've never seen none of the remake movies, and I don't want to see none of them. However, I did watch Step by Step, which of course Step by Step is a huge ripoff of the Brady Bunch, but who cares because I love Step by Step. So they're in the 70s, and at this point in time, Vision is starting to suspect that I think something weird is going on. It's either in this episode or it's the next. Anyways, in this episode, she's pregnant, and she don't know how she got pregnant. And Vision's kind of like, how on earth did you get pregnant? And then all of a sudden, her stomach gets bigger as the episode progresses. So he's kind of just wondering, okay, something's not right here. And she's like, oh, whatever, it's fine, whatever. So she has a friend in this like reality. I forget her name, but her real name is Monica Rambeau. So I put a little pin in her a little bit later. So anyway, she's there with her, and they're talking. And so next thing you know, Wanda is about to give birth, and there's no doctor around. And Vision uses his powers. He picks the doctor up, and he just takes off running with the doctor, or he flies. I can't remember which one. But he's using his powers to get there. And the doctor doesn't seem freaked out that this dude is using his powers and stuff. Now, of course, Wanda is pregnant with the twins. The twins are a very big deal in the comic books. They were created by her will to have like life. And they're Vision's father, even though he never gave his to like make them because he's an android, so he don't have sperm. But it was her will and desire to have kids, and I think they was crafted from like the soul of like Mephisto. That's probably one reason why people think Mephisto is in this show. I'm letting you know right here right now, he's not. So anyway, the twins, I forget their real name. It might be Billy and Bobby, but they go by Wiccan and Speed. Speed, of course, has the powers of Pietro. Reasons I still don't understand why. Because, if Vision's the dad, then why don't they have his powers? But Wiccan has the powers of Wanda. So she's giving birth, and it's like this big climatic magical like birth where the walls aren't really shaking, but things like spinning around, and she's screaming, and she's in agony and pain. And so I'm all like, why aren't there explosions? Like, this is a magical birth. Like, have some like magical stuff happen. But anyway, she gives birth to him. And then Vision finally shows up with the doctor. So it's a nice little kumbaya moment until Wanda starts to get really sad and depressed, talking about how she just gave birth to twins and how she's a twin. And then Monica's all like, oh yeah, Ultron killed your brother, didn't he? So Wanda kind of snaps out of it, and she's like, what did you say? And so Wanda is starting to figure out, okay, how did this woman know the events of Age of Ultron? Because Wanda has created this make-believe world, and she's erased everybody's memory. So Wanda gets very, very agitated with this woman. And she wants to know who she is and talking about she needs to leave and get out now. And the woman's like, just like calm down and everything. And then all of a sudden, we don't see what happens. And the woman completely disappears. And then we see, because Wanda has once again reversed time, and then we see Vision coming in through the door. Monica is nowhere to be found. Like, nowhere whatsoever. And it's kind of like freaky, and the people are like, whoa, where is she? Now, by this time, I believe S.w.o.r.D is now monitoring. Well, they've been monitoring WandaVision for a long time, but now we now been reintroduced to two characters: Darcy from the Thor movies and Agent Jimmy Woo from the Ant-Man movies, I believe. So in the next episodes are very different. I don't believe there's no sitcom stuff that happens in that episode, but pretty much what happens is this: we start to see a woman get reanimated. It's the Monica lady. And so, like, we're like, what's going on? And then we see what happens. Like, oh, she's coming back from the Thanos snap, which is called the blip, which I don't like that. I like Thanos snap a whole lot more. It just sounds cooler. And it's kind of really cool to see the CGI, reanimate this woman's body from when she turned into dust. So anyway, she wakes up. She's in the hospital. She wants to know what's going on, and because it's been 5 years since it's passed, and the lady tells her, your mom has died because her mom had cancer. Now, her mom is a very important character. Her mother is Maria Rambeau from the Captain Marvel movie. In this episode, we find out that Monica is an agent of S.w.o.r.D, and she works for a man who is one of our primary villains, and his name is Hayward. So in a way, he's trying to fill her in on what's going on, about how he shows her this video of Wanda breaking into S.w.o.r.D and stealing Vision's body. So we think. So then she's greeted by Agent Woo and then Darcy, and they're all trying to figure out, what's going on. So Darcy's doing her scientific thing, and Jimmy and Monica are doing more like the agent type thing. At some point in time, we see how Monica got inside Wanda's reality, which is now called the Hex because Darcy named it that. And of course, it's because of the comics. Wanda has Hex powers. So you know how comic book movies do this crap. Basically, she's examining the outer wall of the Hex, which is kind of like this static, like invisible wall. That's kind of like TV static. And so she's examining it. And then she touches it, but Jimmy tells her don't. And next thing you know, she gets sucked in. And that's how she got into the Wanda's reality. And then when you go into Wanda's reality, your brain automatically is like erased, and you're living this like life as a new character. And basically what happens is you have a blank slate, but you can see and hear everything that's going around you, even though you're brainwashed. We also find out how she got out of that reality. Basically, in the Brady Bunch episode, when Wanda finds out, she gets mad and she just unleashes her power and she blasts this woman out her house. We see her busting through the house, through fences, and through several feet. And then next thing you know, she goes right through the little energy barrier. Now we find out in later episodes, this whole like city they in is several miles far. So when she flung her very, 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 very far, which I don't understand. When she was busting through all this stuff and hit the ground, how did she not die? Because at that point in time, she didn't have her powers. We also find out that all the people living in town are real people. They're not figments of her imagination. They're real. And like I said, for they're spelled and everything. Every person is identified by S.w.o.r.D except for one person, Agnes. But for some bizarre reason, they're not trying to figure out who this woman is. So at some point in time, Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy are kind of like, okay, we can probably enter the Hex if somehow we go in as something that is from that time era. Because if you're from that time era, then technically you shouldn't be altered. So they find like an 80s version of a drone, and they equip it with like a camera and a microphone, and they send it in and it works. Hayward, on the other hand, put a missile to it. So next thing you know, Wanda and the kids about to get blown up, and then all of a sudden we see her completely bust out of her reality. And she busts out of that thing like a boss, and she is pissed off, and she's having the drone in her hand. This thing is heavy, and she's able to hold it up, and she just throws it and tosses it at the soldiers. And basically, she tells them this: look, just leave me alone, and I'll leave you alone, and you stay out my home. And they're all like, we can't do that. So then she does like a nice little Magneto move where she turns all of the guns on Hayward, but she doesn't shoot him. She just gives him like a big warning, and then she goes back into her reality and she opens the doors, and then she puts up a force field. It's a nice little boss move, and it makes people think that she might truly be the villain of this whole thing. Because in the comic books, her and her brother start off as villains, just like they did in the MCU. But then later on, they turn good and join the Avengers. Now, the thing that's always bugged me about the MCU is that the reason why they was evil in the MCU is because they was lied to as a kid. And then we will see what happens later on, so let's put a pin in that. So anyway, they was lied to for so many years, and then they became these Hydra agents. And they started working for Ultron. Then when they find out what's been really going on, they have a change of heart, and then they turn good. And it's kind of like, how did they turn good so fast after so many years of hating Tony Stark and the entire Avengers and S.w.o.r.d. and stuff? So it's one of those things that wasn't done properly, and it was very rushed because it was a movie, and that's one thing that's always bugged me. Another thing that's always bugged me is at the end when she shows up at Avengers Tower. It doesn't look like her face. I don't know why it doesn't look like her face. Maybe because her head is tilted up, but it doesn't look like her. It looks like it's been CGI'd on somebody else. So I don't know. Now in the next episode, that's when things are really starting to build up. Basically, the kids, the twin boys, are now little teeny tiny little toddlers. Whenever they get scared, they age themselves up. I'm not exactly sure how they do it. It's probably Wiccan, because he has powers similar to Wanda. Anyway, this happens right in front of Agnes, and she's not fazed by it. She doesn't care. And Wanda's kind of like, oh, well, I guess she don't care. And then she lets Vision know, because Vision's all like, you can't be using your magic in front of her. And she's like, oh, Agnes don't care. So Vision is starting to get kind of suspicious. When he is at work, he's talking to a man, and something happens. I can't really remember what happened. I think Wanda is starting to lose her hold on this man. So Vision taps the man's head and kind of takes him out of that spell, which is kind of weird. I never knew Vision had that power. Speaking of which, I've never really been entirely sure what all Vision powers are, because in the movies he doesn't really do much. All he does is fly around, he uses his super strength, he phases through stuff, and he uses the Mind Stone to blast things, and that's it. And that's kind of how his comic book counterpart is. But I think he has a little bit more. So the fact that he can switch a person's brain on and off is kind of weird, because I didn't know he could do that. And in all the animated series, he pretty much just phases in and out of stuff and fly and zap stuff, just like he does in the movies. So I guess that's his power, but I always assume he had more because of who he's based off of. In the comics, he's a combination of the Martian Manhunter and Red Tornado. They all wear capes with a pop collar. Martian Manhunter can phase through things, he can fly, he has super strength, he has telepathy, but even though what's his name, Vision doesn't really control people's minds, but he has the Mind Stone, so you think he'll be able to do something like that. So but then with Red Tornado, he's also based off him, because Red Tornado, he started off as a villain, and he was supposed to infiltrate the what are they called, the Justice League, but he later defeated, and then he turns good, and then that's that. And that's how Vision started off. He was supposed to be a villain created by Ultron in the comics to infiltrate the Avengers, but then he turns good, and then he's trying to understand his humanity, well, in an android kind of way. So when he snaps this man out of Wanda's reality, the man is freaking out. He's saying how he hasn't slept. She's always in his head. He has no thoughts of his own. And he's just freaking out. And Vision knows something's up. And he knows that her must be Wanda, because Wanda has those type of powers. So towards the end of the episode, Vision has had enough of Wanda, and he flies up and he's ready to throw down because he is demanding that she explain how all of this is possible. How he has no memories of most of his past. He has some memories, but not a lot. And he's just furious, and she, you know what, she's getting mad too. So she flies up and like she's using her power and she's ready to throw down. And then she reveals, she has no idea how all this has happened. Like, it's her, but she don't know how. And so he doesn't believe her, and she's upset. She's all like, you're supposed to love me. Why don't you believe me? And he's all like, because all of this is a lie. And every time the truth starts to come out, there's always a weird distraction. Then knock at the door, there's another distraction. And then it's the biggest reveal that confused the crap out of so many people. So she's all like, that's not me. He's all like, well, I bet it is you because, we're having this argument. The truth about to come out, and then here's another distraction. So anyway, she opens the door, and it is Evan Peters as Pietro. And Darcy's like, oh my God, she recast Pietro. Now, here's the thing. Okay, because this is a sitcom, in the sitcom world, people get recast all the time whenever that person leaves the show or get fired. And they do that all the time. It happened in Bewitched with the two Darrens, which people had no idea at that time. They replaced the dude. When I was watching the reruns as a kid, I didn't even know. And I remember the original Darren was pissed because he's all like, how do people not know? And now when you look at it, you're like, yeah, really, how do people not know? Like, one dude's forehead is bigger than the other one, and their face is completely different. But people never knew that. But they do it all the time in shows, so that's a nice little nod to that. Now, when we see this version of Pietro, of course, he's Evan Peters, which is from the Fox properties. So people are assuming, oh my God, the multiverse. It finally got released. Because here's the thing about Phase 4. Phase 4 is supposed to be all about the multiverse. Wanda is supposed to show up in the second Doctor Strange movie. There's supposed to be 3 Spider-Man in the third Spider-Man movie. And then, so there's supposed to be a bunch of other characters that were supposed to get cast in Marvel movies, but never did, and they're supposed to show up. So, it was always revealed from Elizabeth Olsen that her show was supposed to introduce people into the world of the multiverse. And we assumed that. However, later on, we find out this might not so much be the case. So, anyway, this Pietro acts completely different than the one he does in the Fox movie, and he acts so much differently than the one in the MCU. Well, except for Age of Ultron. But anyways, this Pietro does not have his speed abilities that he have in the Fox movie. He has the MCU version, which is kind of like these squiggly lines that came from Aaron Taylor Johnson, who has yet to ever reappear in the MCU. Why he won't re-show back up? Probably because he's dead. But he could at least do a cameo, which he has not done. The only thing I can speculate is that he might not want to return because people don't really like his version of Quicksilver. They like the one from the Fox movies. And to be fair, his version does suck a lot. It's just very boring. Joss Whedon did nothing good with that character. And then he killed them off. Also, it might have to do because there was a rumor that he used to date Elizabeth Olsen. But they've broken up, but they've done movies since then and they hang out. So that's probably not the reason. It's probably the first one because people just don't like his movies. Or they just don't like, not his movies, but they don't like his version of Quicksilver. So now that the boys are aged up, in the next episode is more of a Malcolm in the Middle type episode. And I really like this episode. It's the Halloween episode. And we get to see them in all of their classic comic book costumes. And it's so great to see that. Yeah, they look kind of ridiculous because it's cheaply made because it's cotton, but in spandex. But, sometimes you just have to go with the classics, Just sometimes you just have to. So by this time, Vision is still fed up and wants answers. But he's playing along for the most part because he knows Wanda is very powerful and she can literally wipe his memory if she wanted to. So anyway, fake Pietro is pretty much hanging out with the boys, and he's teaching them how to use their powers and stuff, because they never really used their powers until just now. So they're doing like the Halloween thing, and him and her are reminiscing about the time they grew up. But then she's kind of like, no, things didn't happen that way. He's like, are you sure? There's a great gag about her asking him, hey, what happened to your accent? Because he's supposed to be from Sokovia. And he's all like, well, what happened to your accent? Which is something that's been bugging me for the longest time. It's how she dropped her accent after Age of Ultron. I guess, because she became Americanized. That's probably why she dropped it. Or just because Elizabeth Olsen probably just couldn't keep it up and probably didn't like it. So as the kids and Fake Pietro are using their powers to wreak havoc, smashing people's pumpkins on their yard and stuff, Vision is out looking for answers. Now in this episode, we see tons of kids. This is a big thing because in the last episode, when Wanda and Vision had their fight, he asked her, where are all the kids in the neighborhood? Like, our kids are the only ones in this like little like neighborhood, but he never ever sees any other kids ever. And so she couldn't really give him an answer as to like why that is. But then in this episode, we see tons of kids. So as Vision is like exploring the entire like city or town, I should say, he's going further and further towards the hex wall. And as he gets further and further out, he's starting to see some of the townspeople. They're kind of like in this zombie-like trance. The further he goes out and closer to the wall, the more these people are kind of phasing out of Wanda's reality, and she can't have too much of a hold on them. So then he finds Agnes, and she's in the car, and she's in a trance, and she's trying to escape. Well, he zaps her back into reality, and she is freaking out. She asks him, are you an Avenger? And stuff like that. And you need to help us and all this other stuff. And so she's freaking out so much that he's all, I'll help you. And he puts her back in the trance. And then she drives off. So now he has had enough. He then breaks through the barrier, and he's trying to get on the outside world. Well, he sees all the S.w.o.r.d agents and Darcy. Now at this point in time, Darcy, Rambo, and what did I say his name? Wong. They are no longer friendly with the S.w.o.r.d people. So he's trying his best like to break free, but he can't. There's something holding him back. And the further and further he's leaving that reality, he starts to break apart. And we see pieces of his body going back into that reality. We have no idea why. It's like, why? Why can't he go back into the real world and stuff? So he's desperately trying. And the S.w.o.r.d agents, they're not trying to help him whatsoever. And the next thing you know, Wiccan, he can sense this. And he tells like Wanda, like, Daddy's hurt and we need to help him. So she's all like, use the powers and try to find him. Then Fake Pietro, he said something really rude about Vision. I think he said something about like him dying twice, and so who cares about that? But technically Vision died. This will be his third time dying because he died twice in Infinity War. But anyways, she gets pissed off and she blasts him through like a wooden sign, which he totally deserved. So then Wanda's like, screw it. And then she unleashes all of her power to expand her reality. She expands it so far that the S.w.o.r.d agents, some of them get trapped in her reality, but she also managed to get close enough to Vision. So now his body is completely healed. Darcy is now in this reality. And we find out in the next episode, Darcy is now part of a traveling circus. Oh yeah. Now one thing I find very bizarre about this episode, now I love this episode because it's a Modern Family episode, and I love Modern Family until about the 6th season. After that, it started to suck, and then it didn't get good again until their last season. But one thing that's really weird is like after all that suspense with the Halloween episode, now Wanda's kind of like, you know what, I just need a mommy day. I just need a day to myself. I don't care what's going on. And the boys are like freaking out. They're like, well, what about dad? And she's like, you know what, your dad's a big boy. He decided what he wants. I'm not gonna deal with it. And it's just like really weird because it's kind of like all that suspense, and then Marvel once again went back to the humor. I'm so sick and tired of that. But I have to say, Elizabeth Olsen is doing a great Claire impersonation. Like, she nails it. This is probably her best impersonation throughout the entire series. Like, when I say she nails it, she nails it. But now that Wanda's used so much of her magic, now she's starting to see that she's starting to lose, like, kind of like a grip on reality. Like, certain things in her house are phasing in and out of different sitcoms. And she's phased by this, but not really. Like, she sees something's up, but she really kind of doesn't care too much. Like, she does and she doesn't. So when Vision wakes up, he's still on the ground, and then he finds Darcy, which of course she's been spelled as well. So he zaps her out of her spell, and they hop into an ice cream truck, and then they drive off. I don't know why they don't fly, but you know, they're on a little road trip. So anyway, she informs him of everything that's been going on since he has no memory. And she tells him all the events of both Infinity War and Endgame, which makes no sense because she wasn't there. And not only was she not there were no cameras. So how does she know exactly what all happened? Not only that, but Monica also knows what happened in Infinity War. And she died as well as the Thanos snap. So how did people know? Unless, I guess, when the people came back, I guess when the people who were alive, they gave such a great detail that I guess everybody knows now or something. I don't know. You know, it's like, so as they're trying to get back to Wanda and Vision's house, they're constantly getting stopped because I guess maybe Wanda is trying to stop them from finding out the answers, or so we think. And so, like, every time they try to get back, there's always something like blocking their way. So he's kind of just like, screw it, I'm just gonna fly. And he leaves Darcy there. And we don't see her until the very last episode. So at this point in time, Monica is trying to get back inside the Hex. So she calls up some of her people that she can trust, and they give her this specialized military van. So she takes it full speed and she rams the barrier. Rambo, get it? Well, it doesn't work, and it's getting crushed by the barrier wall because it's also a force field. So only half of the little truck van thing is transformed. So she decides, all right, I'm just gonna run through. So she takes off her helmet. She has a hazmat suit on, and she runs completely through. And for some bizarre reason, the truck van thing won't go through, but she can. And it's one of the coolest visuals ever. So she's going in, like her face is getting distorted, and it's a really cool visual. When Monica makes it back to Wanda's house, Wanda is not having it. Wanda does not like Monica Rambeau whatsoever. And she's ready to blast her again. And in fact, she does blast her again. Only this time, Monica powers kicks in and she lands to the ground. Wanda is surprised by this, but for some bizarre reason, Monica is not. Like, okay, if you just now got superpowers, wouldn't you be kind of weird as to why your body is surging with energy and why you haven't got blasted by this powerful person? I'm assuming that Monica known that she has powers, but they was never really like triggered that much, never really activated, and Wanda's power is kind of like triggering them or something like that. So at some point in time, I forget what happens after this, but Wanda and Agnes are talking at Agnes' house, and they're talking, and then Wanda's kind of like, "Oh, where are the boys?" And Agnes is kind of like, "Oh, they're in the basement." So Wanda goes down in the basement. This is when things really kick up. So like, it's really eerie and scary and dark inside the basement, right? And so Wanda's slowly walking through, and she can see like these type of like vines and roots and stuff growing on a wall, and then she sees this magic spell book, and then she sees all these magic glowing like letters, and she does not see her boys whatsoever. So she's just kind of like, what is going on? And then next thing you know, Agnes shows up, and she's all like, "Wanda, I know what you are. You're a witch and everything." And so this is the first time she's ever been called a witch in the MCU. And so, like, then the coolest reveal happens in the catchiest theme song. Agnes explains it was her the entire time. And Agnes is actually Agnetha Harpus, who's this big witch in the Marvel comic books. The first time I've ever seen her was actually X-Men Evolution. She didn't show up that much, but basically she's always the type of person who always helps Wanda out. She helps her with her power, she helps grooms her, all that good stuff. And when I said this is a catchy theme song, this is a catchy theme song. People have covered this song. There's a dude who did like a rock cover. I put a link in the description below. But it's a very catchy theme song. It's #1 on iTunes, for crying out loud. However, what doesn't make no sense is how was it Agnetha all along? Because we see it was Wanda, but like Wanda said, she has no idea how she did all this. Well, we're about to find out how. The next episode starts off in Salem, Massachusetts in the 1600s. And we see Agnetha at a stake. She's about to be burnt because she's a witch, or so we think. It turns out the people who are about to burn her are her own people, witches themselves, and her mother. Apparently, Agnetha, she likes to delve into like the dark arts. And so she's evil. And you know, they're all like, you're not a good witch and you need to die and all this other stuff. And so they pretty much unleash all their power onto her. And at first it's hurting her, but then she's like, ha ha ha, look at me. And then she starts using her powers back on them. Because she's more powerful than them, because she's delving in dark arts. So now she's draining them all of their magic and their energy to where they die as little husks on the ground. And then she defeats her mother, and she takes her mother's brooch, a little necklace thing that she's always wearing on the show. I don't know the significance of this brooch, but she's always wearing it. And so then she explains to Wanda why Wanda can't use her magic in this basement. It's because Agnetha placed up these magical rooms. Basically, only the witch that puts up these barriers can use their magic in the barrier. No other witch can. Now let's put a pin in that later. Now Agnetha is going all Miss Frizzle on her and takes her on a magic field trip. And we get to explore Wanda's past, and we start to see how everything exactly came to be. And it's one of the biggest twists and one of the biggest reveals I've ever seen in like a long time. And it's so touching too. It starts off in Sokovia, and we find out why Wanda has made a reality full of sitcoms. It's because when she was a little girl, she was learning how to speak English, and her dad would sell like bootleg counterfeit type DVDs of sitcoms. Old classic kind. And Wanda loved these to death, and her favorite was Dick Van Dyke. Now this makes sense that she would use American TVs to learn how to speak English and learn about the culture. That's really how a lot of people do, especially foreigners. When I was watching Dancing with the Stars, they had Elizabeth Berkley on there from Saved by the Bell. And her partner, who's from another country, he told her he learned how to speak English by watching Saved by the Bell. Heck, even I do it. Like, I'm from America in the South, and I've been watching like a lot of comedies and dramas from other countries because of streaming now. Dairy Girls, Some Girls, Drifters, The Miranda Show. I'm learning so much about their slang, how they drive, like the foods they eat, the clothes they wear, like all kind of stuff. So you really do learn a lot from like watching TV. And so when they're having family TV time, next thing you know, a giant, like their house getting bombed. And next thing you know, it's a giant Stark missile that Wanda sees. And then, so she's reaching out to it and then next thing you know, the bomb doesn't explode. But her parents dies from the other explosions. And it's like, Wanda's all like, she thought the bomb was a dud. That's why it didn't go off. But Adna's like, oh, no. You use chaos magic because you're a witch and everything. So apparently Wanda has had her power since like birth. And she did not get them from the Mind Stone as we all thought she did in those end credits. Then it goes from that into where she's at Hydra. I don't know if she's a teenager or an adult. Because, okay, when she was a kid, Malcolm in the Middle was out on DVD. So, when did that come out? So, she must be really young in the MCU. So, anyways, we see her at Hydra. She signs up because she wants to kill Tony Stark and everything. And we see the Mind Stone merge with her. Like, part of it went inside her. And I guess it heightened her powers more than what they were before. Then we see her either after the events of Age of Ultron and around Civil War time. So this is probably doing more Civil War because she lost her accent. And she's in her room at Avengers Tower and she's watching TV, and Vision comes in and he's trying to understand humor because he doesn't understand, even though he has the minds of so many. So she informs him why she loves sitcoms, and I think it's because they just pretty much remain the same, like a constant, and they bring her a lot of joy. So yeah, that's why she created a sitcom world out of her own desire for happiness. Then another reveal happened. So like then we get a flashback to when she went to S.w.o.r.d. And when she went there, that whole video we saw before was fabricated. When she goes there, she's pretty calm. She's upset, but for the most part, she's calm. And so Hayward shows her Vision's body. It's completely dismantled. They have ripped him apart. And she doesn't steal the body. And she doesn't attack nobody. Instead, what she does is she places her hand on his forehead and she says goodbye. Because she tells him all she wanted to do was bury him in the ground. And he's like, he's not going to let her do that because his body is made out of vibranium. And that's the strongest metal there is. And he's one of the most advanced androids in the entire world. So there's no way he's going to let her go off with the body and put it in the ground. So she's sad, she's crying, and she leaves. She heads back to her car and she drives to Restview, which is the town that she texted. And then we see her have a deed. Her and Vision was going to have a house built on this empty loft. Now this is what doesn't make no sense. When did her and Vision have time to do that? Because, okay, she was evil in Age of Ultron. Then she became good towards the end. So then from that until Civil War. At that point in time, it made it seem like they were not in a relationship. They were just like talking, kind of interacting a little bit, hinting that they might be something because of how the comic books are. After Civil War, they are now on the run. Into Infinity War, we see them again, and he's wearing disguise. So, and the deed is in both their names. So they couldn't have gotten that house when they was on the run because they was on the run and they was hiding out. And it's like they couldn't do it after Infinity War because they both died in Infinity War. And then she got brought back to life in Endgame. So when exactly they have time to get like a house? That don't make no sense. And then, in like an emotional rage, she unleashes all of her power. And I mean all of her power. Kind of like a House of M type moment. And she just creates recreates all of Restview into a sitcom world. And she builds the house from scratch. And then she resurrects a memory of Vision from her mind. And that's the Vision that's been in her reality this entire time. It's not the real Vision because his body's back at S.w.o.r.d. She literally creates beings and recreate matter out of like thin air. And it's a really cool reference to the whole House of M thing when she changes all of reality, because she has reality shape-shifting type abilities. So it turns out she's not the villain after all. Well, kind of she is because she's kind of enslaving these people, but it was by mistake. But then Agnes tells her, "Oh, I know exactly what you are," and she disappears out into the street. Then she hears twins screaming for help. So Wanda runs out. And then next thing you know, Agnes has both of them on chains, or magical chains. And she tells her, I thought you was like a myth, this mystical being that was like extinct or something like that. She tells Wanda like what she is. I'm thinking to myself, please say mutants. Please say mutants. But no. Instead, she says Wanda is a Scarlet Witch. But I'll take that. Now there are two end credit scenes at the end of this episode. The first one is when Monica is trying to go down in the basement and fake Pietro stops her. The second one, Hayward now has Vision's body back online and he turned him completely white, which comes from the comic books. Basically what it is that after Vision dies, he has no memory, no soul, no nothing like that, and he gets like turned to like this evil being and a force of like destruction. So now we get into the last episode, and it's the episode we've all been waiting for, the huge superhero villain smackdown. So It's Wanda and it's versus Agnetha. They're in the sky and they're just like duking it out. They're throwing energy like blasts at each other and all this other cool stuff. This gets stopped by White Vision. Or I think actually Wanda knocks her out so hard that she's under her house, which is kind of like an old reference to the Wizard of Oz. So yeah, Wanda knocks her out with her magic, and then White Vision shows up. And at first, she's very shocked. She's relieved to see him, and she can't believe she sees him. And then he like touches her face, but then he starts crushing her head, and he lifts her up. So as he's about to kill her, in comes the fake Vision. And now it's superhero, supervillain smackdown. So now it's both Visions fighting each other, which this is great. I've been wanting to see Vision use his powers for the longest time because he never really does that. In Age of Ultron, he barely does it. In Civil War, he barely does it. So it's finally, especially Infinity War, like, because all of those other movies, he's always been weak. So, like, now it's great to see him finally, like, kick some butt. So Wanda and Agnetha, they're like getting it on, which by the way, this is great. I love the CGI in this. It's great CGI. And it's great use of magic and power. However, Agnetha, since she's so much powerful and knows more spells and everything, why doesn't she do more with her magic similar to Doctor Strange? That would have been great to see, but I guess they ran out of money because this show is very expensive to make. Now, as she sees that she's about to lose this fight, Agnetha decides to unspell all the people in town. And they are pissed. Because, see, they have memories of what they're doing. And they tell her, they can't sleep. They're so tired. They miss their kids because they're trapped in a room and they can't get to them. They don't want their family to try to come and get them because then they will be spilled. And then they're about to lynch her. So what she does is she opens up the barrier and she tells all of them to get out. So she's breaking down the barrier walls. As the people are running out, the military, or S.w.o.r.d, I should say, are going in at full force. And so as the barrier is being broken down, she is starting to see that her kids and Vision cannot survive in this, like, in the real world, and they're starting to like come apart. So Agnetha tells her, what you gonna do, hon? Are you gonna let all these people go, or are you gonna save your family? So of course she saves her family. Another big reveal in this episode is coming with fake Evan Peters. We now finally figure out what's going on with him, as him and Monica are down in the basement. She's trying to escape, but he won't let her. Then somehow she gets the upper hand on him, and she finds out that he's being controlled by a necklace. So she rips it off, and he's back to normal. And then the dumbest reveal of them all happens. We find out that he is not Pietro from the multiverse. He is not Pietro from the Fox movies. I assumed this was just a different version of Pietro that had the same powers as the MCU one, but looked like the way the one of the Fox one, because there's a whole multiverse thing. I don't know. He's an actor named Ralph Bohner. Yes, Marvel has went down the childish, stupid, comedic route once again. They need to grow up. This is getting ridiculous. So Wanda tells her family, kids, take care of the military. Your dad will take care of the other dad, and then I'm taking care of Agnes. So Wiccan uses his power to like entrance like the soldiers, and then Speed is running around disarming all of them and taking off their like hats and sunglasses in a very Quicksilver-y kind of way. But then Hayward decides he's gonna shoot the twins, and then that's when Monica shows up, and she uses her power. The bullets go straight through her and fall to the ground. Now I'm not sure what her powers are in the comic books, but they're pretty cool in the show. And then once again, forced humor has come within the MCU. First Hayward is about to hop in the car and he's about to ram the kids and Monica. But then Darcy saves the day by ramming him with the ice cream truck. Now the ice cream truck has been reconfigured. It used to be a military truck. And then she says something really silly and comedic towards him. And I'm just like, are you freaking serious? Like, once again, with this comedy crap. So both the Visions are now back fighting each other. So as the two Visions are fighting each other, Vision decided, they're evenly matched, but he can help this dude like understand who and what he is and what he used to be. So they have a philosophical discussion, and Vision unlocks kind of like his memories of how he used to be a good person. And he tells him, you need to be you, and I am you, but I'm more like a memory of you. So White Vision leaves, and we don't see him no more. So we don't know what's going on with him. And now Agnes and Wanda, they're duking it out in the sky, and it's a very great visual. They're just it's changing like magical blows and all kind of stuff. So since Agnetha and Wanda in the sky fighting, Agnes just wants her magic. That's all she wants. And she tells Wanda, give me all your magic and I'll leave your family alone. Of course she's lying. And Wanda's all like, I'm not a witch. I don't want my magic, so take it. So then she just unleashes all her magic into like Agnetha. And then Agnetha is about to like use her magic against Wanda, but we see Wanda is still flying around in the sky, and her body, face is kind of skeletal, and so we're kind of like, well, how is she able to fly if she doesn't have her magic no more? And then it's revealed when Agnetha tries to use her magic against Wanda, she can't because Wanda has put up all these magic runes all in the sky. Now here's the thing that's confusing me. Wanda doesn't have a photographic memory. And she didn't even know she was a witch. And she didn't know anything about magical runes and all this barrier stuff. So when did she have time to learn it? I know Agnetha told her about it, but she didn't have time to study it. And so this is a powerful spell. You think you would have to like learn it and stuff. And you have to remember what the letters look like. So this is kind of rushed. I don't like that one bit. So then Wanda finally does it. She unleashes the Scarlet Witch, and she uses her power to create a costume, which this is a great costume, by the way. I really like the design. I don't like the material. The material looks like your typical MCU costumes, which is kind of getting on my nerves. They need to change things up. They keep using the same material, the same patterns, and it's just getting old. But it's great to see Wanda finally looking like the Scarlet Witch, because in her old costume, it was mostly like street clothes, and it resembled that of X-Men Evolution. But now this new outfit resembles the comic books, although I'm not sold on the headpiece. The one from the Halloween episode was a little too big. This one looks a little too demonic looking. I like the one from The Gifted. That was a nice headpiece. So now they're on the ground, and Agnetha has been defeated, and Wanda's about to punish her. And she tells Wanda, look, you don't know what you unleashed. You need my help to learn how to use this magic and all this other stuff. And Wanda's kind of like, if I need your help, I know where to find you. But she doesn't kill her. Nope. Instead, she tells her, I'm going to turn you back into what you were in this reality. And that's the nosy neighbor. So she puts her back in a magical trance, which Agnetha now cannot get out of because Wanda has took all her magic back, and she took Agnetha's magic as well. Wanda tells Vision and her kids, I love you and everything, but I can't keep enslaving these people, and I can't keep this reality happening. So in a very, very touching moment, she unleashes her power and she closes the barrier walls. They say goodnight to their kids for one final sleep. And it's just such a touching moment. Like, this is like tearing her up inside because all she ever wanted was to be happy. All she ever wanted was a family. Her brother died. Her parents died. Her boyfriend died. Some of her friends are dead. Other ones are old now, and the other ones are doing their own thing. And it's just like she has really nobody. She has a few Avengers, but they're always saving the world. So she doesn't have nobody that she can really love, And so Vision, he tells her that he wants to see her one last time in the light. So So he turns the light on, and they have a heart to heart where he cries, she cries. They kiss for one final time, and then he disappears. And then next thing you know, she's back in the empty loft from when she first arrived there in the clothes that she was wearing at that time. And so she turns back into the Scarlet Witch and she flies off. Now that Hayward has been defeated and everything, Monica is now getting debriefed, but she gets debriefed by a scroll and she had no idea. And the scroll tells her, the boss wants to talk to you. And of course, we all know who that is, and that's Nick Fury. So that was the first end credit scene. Then the second end credit scene, we see Wanda all by herself in the woods, in a cabin, in the mountain woods. And as she is about to walk through the house, we see the Scarlet Witch floating in the air in her astral form, reading that evil magic book. And she looks evil in the face. I have no idea what's going on, but Edna did tell her, you have no idea what you just unleashed because you're supposed to be the most dangerous thing and the most powerful thing in the world. And then it ends. But not before we hear the kids scream again with the astral projection. So I have no idea what's going on. So that was WandaVision. It sucks that the multiverse didn't get ripped open. We saw no true hints of it other than a Pietro lookalike that was Ralph Bonner and everything. But it was a really decent show. I wish it would have had more reveals in the earlier episodes. I do like the sitcom aspect of it. I like when they had a mixture of both sitcom and reality. But it is what it is. And some people can love it, some people can hate it. I love it. I think it's great. It could have been better. But hey, it's their first outing of trying something different, So I can totally respect that. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.